Everyone, and welcome to another wonderful session. We are super excited for you to be here today, and I am very excited to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is Kayla Butler. She has worked in ECE for 7 years in various capacities, including teaching, administration, and intervention. She prides herself on becoming a force in early childhood development, learning, and inclusion through both hands-on experience and education. Her bachelor's degree is in early childhood development with differentiated instruction, specializing in early intervention. Her master's degree is in psychology. Her PhD is in marriage and family therapy, specializing in child and adolescent therapy. She is a certified parent instructor, a certified cognitive coach, an infant and toddler mental health family associate, and is certified in Arizona to teach K-12 family science classes. Kayla is certified through the Arizona Workforce Registry to provide professional development and technical assistance to ECE teachers. We are so excited to have Kayla here with us today. So Kayla, if you will, please next slide. This is just a short disclaimer that I want you to take a moment to read. Next slide, please. This is our last disclaimer. All right, Kayla, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction. I am very excited to be presenting here today. Just some quick information about me. A lot of it was said in my intro, but I do own a business as an early childhood consultant. I'm also a child psychometrist for local psychologists, and I teach early childhood courses in a college setting. I also am a freelance teacher at on OutSchool. And so my bachelor and master's were both at UAGC, and I do have a handful of certifications and endorsements relating to both child development and psychology. And I've had several years of experience working and volunteering with children in different capacities. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, please feel free to reach out, and I would love to help you out more. Okay. So let's start with a couple of definitions. Early intervention is the process of identifying and providing effective early support to children who are at risk of poor outcomes. This is typically due to a developmental delay, but it can be for other reasons as well. Typically, early intervention is considered birth to 3 years of age, but it can be up to 5 years depending on the environment. For example, a private year-round preschool would most likely consider early intervention to take place from 1 year to 5 years and encompass all domains. But a public school here in Arizona, or a school that works with our program called AZIP, is going to primarily work with the 0 to 3 age range for developmental domains, and the 3 to 5 year range for cognitive and academic domains. Some programs only work with birth to 3, and then they transition to another program. It really depends on who you're working with. For the sake of this presentation, we will be referencing primarily the 3 to 5 year range, since that's the age range focused heavily on here in Arizona. Early intervention is intended to identify and refer for services, not treat clinically. The intervention process itself is not intended to treat. There are specialists and licensed professionals who cooperate with early intervention to provide the services. An interventionist is not typically qualified to provide services such as speech therapy or occupational therapy. However, they can be qualified to create the plans, such as IFSPs and IEPs. The states are required to have their own program offered for free. In Arizona, it's called AZIP, or Arizona Early Intervention Program. And many private organizations offer services at cost. My business, for example, goes to private preschools and offers intervention services, since most private schools do not have an interventionist or a behavior specialist on staff. Some private schools do, but they are most likely grant-funded positions, which is not always dependable for every year. Then there's PBIS, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It's an evidence-based tiered framework for supporting students' behavioral, academic, social, emotional, and mental health. Typically, PBIS is implemented in elementary school and high school settings. In Arizona, nearly every elementary school implements PBIS as a school and classroom management structure. PBIS has systematic steps meant to guide actions and responses for students, teachers, and staff. It's like a handbook for behavior management. So what do these two concepts look like working together? With PBIS, you get appropriate and effective response to behaviors in the moment. You get preventing behaviors versus always reacting to them. And you have a shift in perspective and approach when managing behaviors, and following a consistent, predictable structure when dealing with classroom management and behaviors. Using these strategies as early intervention allows for a perspective of identification and prevention. It enables teachers to look at a child holistically, and it assists in determining what is situational behavior and what is in need of further investigation for support. So this is the pyramid. If you want to understand intervention and PBIS, you really need to know this pyramid. This is the structure for PBIS strategies, and it's the guide on how and when to implement interventions with the children. The idea of this pyramid is benchmarks. So tier 1 is intended for all students. Tier 2 is intended for the ones who need a little extra support. And tier 3 is intended for the few who need intensive support. But none of it would work unless there's a solid foundation at the preschool with an effective workforce who are willing and able to learn new strategies and implement them within their classroom with fidelity. And this also includes administration. Let's take a closer look at tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 and 2 are really where the preschool staff and teachers live. Tier 1 is a universal classroom management approach using strategies that emphasize modeling, teaching, and acknowledging positive social, emotional, and behavioral skills. These are universal methods, such as prioritizing instructional support, giving feedback, minimizing distractions, providing major concept summaries, enforcing structure, rules and routines, and offering attention and praise when appropriate. These can include simple strategies such as classroom jobs, clear expectations, fidget bands on chairs, visual schedules, a calming corner, timers, and limiting distractions on the walls. Tier 2 includes targeted approaches that are tailored to the child and their specific behaviors. They can include social skills groups, self-management, academic supports. They encourage replacement behaviors and discourage challenging behaviors. And they do this without being intrusive, invasive, or requiring special training for the most part. All teachers are able to implement tier 2 strategies, though it is often easier with the help of an interventionist on site. This is because managing behaviors can sometimes, depending on the teacher or the students, be a full-time job in itself. Elementary school teachers are often expected to manage IEP goals on top of doing their job of teaching. Now, public preschool teachers also have to navigate this challenge. In private preschool, this looks a little different. However, in every setting, the idea is, what can I do for this child as a teacher in order to help them and keep them in the classroom? And tier 3 is intended for trained professionals and interventionists. This level really involves parent meetings, intensive hands-on interventions, IEP writing, referrals to specialists. It is highly effective, but I recommend having someone on staff who's been properly trained in how to implement tier 3 with fidelity. So I love this quote from Carl Jung. If there's anything that we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it's not something that could better be changed in ourselves. Now, this is a perspective. It takes a special person to hold this perspective. However, every person who works with young children, especially under 5, should hold this perspective close to their heart. According to the 2017 data from the National Survey of Children's Health, 250 kids in the US are suspended or expelled from preschool every day, with that number rising each year. That was 6 years ago now. So that's in the ballpark of 100,000 children under the age of 5 being, quote, kicked out of school in a year's time. That statistic really should bother you. These are children whose brains haven't even fully developed yet, who are learning social norms that potentially could be lacking at home, who are learning how to socially interact with others. These are not children who should be removed from their school for simply being 3 years old. So this begs the question, was a warning given? Was an intervention attempted? Were teachers properly trained on child development and behavior? Was the behavior age appropriate or was it atypical? Was progress tracked with fidelity? These steps then justify expulsion. That's why PBIS is so important, especially in this young age group. So I get a lot of teacher bias regarding child behavior, a lot of failed expectations of how a child should act. One question that I often receive from preschool teachers is, why should I give this child a reward for doing what everyone else is already doing? This is what they're supposed to do, and he hasn't been doing it all morning, so why should I reward him now? They get frustrated with the child and they feel like rewarding them for one good deed after a day, a week, a year of, quote, bad deeds is just letting the child feel like they got away with everything. These feelings are valid to an extent. I get it, I worked in the classroom for a lot of years. However, it's important to remember that to a child, especially 0 to 5, they don't look at their actions as spiteful or intending to get under your skin. Behavior is just a child expressing what they want or need, but they don't necessarily know how to express it verbally, or possibly expressing what they don't even know they want or need. They're just doing what they know to do. Our job is to teach them the healthiest way to express these feelings. It's so important to celebrate that one little good thing, even if it's exactly what the rest of the class is supposed to be doing. That praise is everything in that moment. It's far more impactful than you may realize. So a key to this behavior puzzle is incentivizing desired behaviors. So there's 3 ways that rewarding small behaviors despite poor behavior positively affects the intervention process in classroom management. Reason number 1, choosing an incentive that the child wants to earn is highly effective. It creates buy-in. It shouldn't be something that the teacher thinks they may like. Like, for example, a teacher saw the child playing with a car once, so they're going to use cars. But rather, something that the child has expressed interest in themselves. There has to be that intrinsic motivation to obtain that reward, or else you're fighting an uphill battle. It doesn't always have to be a tangible item. It could be, for example, holding a teacher's hand. Reason number 2, establishing relationships with the child before demanding or expecting is crucial to cooperation, and it helps shape the child's behavior. Incentives build relationship quickly. Remember, children are just little people. Think about how you would feel if your supervisor started each day with demands and expectations of you without saying good morning first. And reason number 3, creating opportunities for the child to experience success in intervention is essential to shaping their behavior. It cannot always be negative or a correction. Again, think about yourself as an adult, never receiving any wins throughout your day. Goals must be attainable so that the child can have frequent wins in order to avoid discouragement. Making your goals with the child SMART goals is a great place to start to ensure attainability. Applied behavior analysis, or ABA, is a scientific approach to therapy for children with developmental disorders, most often autism, and it utilizes one-on-one approaches dealing with rewards and consequences in an attempt to modify behavior. These therapists focus on the development of the child, such as speech, social skills, and adaptive skills. ABA starts with a negative behavior, such as a child hitting themselves when frustrated. The therapist analyzes the behavior and applies evidence-based interventions. They monitor the child and track progress. Then they either continue with what they are doing or they adapt it to address what they've monitored. It's a very straightforward and scientific approach, so it's a really popular method for children with autism and developmental disorders. Most of you have probably heard this idea that all behavior is communication. This is a phrase used often in ABA therapy. If behavior is communication, then how do we find out what this child is non-verbally communicating, what they're trying to tell us with their behaviors? So while ABA is almost always used with children diagnosed with autism, there are a lot of beneficial research-based techniques used in this approach. The children you're working with do not have to be autistic or have a diagnosed developmental disorder for you to capitalize on ideas used in ABA in order to change behaviors. For example, how do we determine what a child's behavior is communicating? This is where functions come into play. In ABA, there are 4 functions of behavior. One or more of these functions are the root of typically nonverbal behavior. The child could be looking to escape a situation, such as avoiding an activity they do not enjoy by hiding under the table. The child could be looking for attention, such as yelling at friends for something that seemed insignificant to the teacher. The child could have a sensory need, such as spinning around the room and knocking into friends. The child could want a tangible item or activity, such as snatching a friend's toy without asking. An easy way to remember these 4 functions is the acronym EAST. So the idea here is that you find the function, you address the function, not necessarily the behavior or the symptom. Much like if a doctor treated you for a bacterial infection with antibiotics, but did not give you a cough medicine because in their mind, they kill the bacteria, the cough goes away. Same concept. Now, of course, if the cough was causing you to not be able to breathe, the doctor would treat it. Much like if a behavior is an immediate danger to the child or others, obviously address the behaviors. But you don't need to be an ABA therapist to identify functions. The child does not need to be autistic for you to benefit from this idea. An interventionist can complete a functional behavior assessment, which is used for children with developmental disorders. But in my experience with children who are not autistic, it's completely possible to identify functions without a formal FBA or functional behavior assessment. As a teacher or professional who works with children, you simply need to look at a situation and view the behavior in functions. It's a mindset and a perspective in the classroom. You put on your function glasses, like we ask kids to put on their reading glasses or listening ears. You find an effective, positive way to meet the functional need of that child in that moment, and you will typically diffuse the situation without having to take drastic measures such as expulsion. So what does everything I've talked about here all look like put together? With these 2 approaches, ABA and PBIS, intertwined, I've created an equation that I live by when working with a client. Every parent, teacher, and business owner that I work with hears this equation. Function discovery plus positive approach equals diminished behavior. Unless a child has a severe preschool delay or a diagnosis that's beyond my scope of practice, this almost always works. There are a lot of tools that I use in the preschool classroom for Tier 2 interventions. For communication, I utilize ASL. Now, I went to Phoenix College and I learned the language so that I could use it in my work. I love the language. It's a great asset for children who can't or choose not to communicate verbally. Obviously, you don't have to go and spend 2 years learning the entire language, but I advise you to learn the basic signs and try them with your kids. I also use some basic picture exchange communication system cards. This is another great non-confrontational way to encourage verbal communication with the kids who use nonverbal behaviors to communicate their needs. Redirection to an image or sign is a great way to quickly and easily discourage negative behaviors that stem from language or communication barriers. For sensory needs, I utilize a variety of toys and tools. With there being 5 senses, at any given time, a child could be in sensory overload in the classroom. Probably my most used and most effective tool is a good pair of headphones. Even the best behaved, most typical child there is has sensory needs and gets overstimulated. Children who are really struggling in the classroom have this autonomous need that, when unmet, creates severe challenging behaviors that are a lot of times out of their control. Headphones take out the noise, the highly intensive, constant stimulation that could very well be causing their central nervous system to just scream inside. Headphones are an amazing tool. I suggest getting a handful of pairs for each classroom. My second favorite tool is a token system. This is another strategy most often used in ABA and with autistic children. However, any child can benefit from a token system. Any child with behaviors that you wish to change can benefit from a token system. Again, the idea is you pick a reward that's intrinsically motivating for that child, and you start generously with the tokens, and gradually you get more selective with when you give them a token. The idea is that the child has buy-in and can visually see his progress, and that does wonders for a child. So what do these intervention strategies have to do with PBIS? How do ABA, PBIS, and functions equate to early intervention in the preschool classroom? PBIS is a systematic approach to behaviors. You take the symptoms and then you choose a, quote, treatment for the function, so to speak. Alternative communication, sensory tools, token systems, these are my generic go-tos for ages 3 to 5. Most of the time, one of these tricks will help the situation. If not, I turn to my magic PBIS list. So this is my magic list. This is a website called PBIS World, www.pbisworld.com. And on this website, there's a list of challenging behaviors that you see here. For example, frustration, impulsiveness, tantrums. So once you choose a behavior, it takes you to a list of PBIS approved interventions that you can implement for that behavior. It also explains the why behind the intervention, essentially how it meets the functional need of the child. Some interventions are targeted to only elementary age children. However, even those are easy to accommodate and modify for preschool ages. Most of the interventions are preschool ready. This website also has all of the documentation forms that you could possibly need in order to implement the interventions and track the progress with fidelity. This monitoring is what, in the end, can justify an expulsion. Without it, expulsion should never be the first response to a behavior. If you are a training junkie like I am, the Pyramid Model Consortium would be a great place to start. This website is an incredible asset to those trying to implement early intervention into their program. This is www.pyramidmodel.org. This organization offers a large amount of trainings on the pyramid in preschool, as well as intervention and trauma-informed care. This course specifically that I have pulled up here is Pyramid Model Practices in Early Intervention. And in my opinion, it would be the first place to start should you decide to start doing intervention in your school. And in closing, I wanted to leave you with these 2 powerful literature resources. The PBIS World Magic List can also be downloaded into a printable book form. I use this book to take into the classroom with me and make decisions in real time. It's incredibly helpful for immediate results. It's available for print for $5 at the PBIS World website. Another resource I recommend, especially for preschool admin, is the PBIS Tier Handbooks by Jessica Hannigan and Linda Hauser. These handbooks are the step-by-step guide to self-assessment, proactiveness, and implementation with fidelity. They walk you through exactly how to begin an intervention process with PBIS strategies. This is really targeted to admin and leadership with policymaking abilities. They also give guidance on how to create buy-in from your teachers as admin. Remember that this is the foundation for the pyramid. Without that teacher buy-in, you'll be facing a tough battle of will. These books are wonderful, very informative, and detailed handbooks. They are available on Amazon for about $30 each. And that is the end of my presentation.
Kayla, that was amazing. I knew it would be. I am super excited that you were here presenting with us today. And thank you so much for watching this presentation, and have a wonderful day.